It's my pleasure to welcome Colonel Richard Kemp, who joins me here in the studio. Colonel Kemp, welcome.
Great pleasure to be with you, Benjamin.
Thank you for being with me. So let's dive right into this. There's a lot of talk about the disparity between the Iranian negotiating position, which is that they are willing to talk about essentially enrichment, and what Israel would like the American negotiating position to be, which would be to cover the end of the nuclear program, a severe curbing of the ballistic missile program, and also an end, really, to the proxy program that we've all had to fight and contend with here in Israel since October the 7th, and in fact, long before. How do you think that we're going to bridge that gap, and how does the military build-up lead into bridging that gap, if at all?
Well, I think, first of all, the military build-up is an essential component of actually getting anything out of the Iranians. You know, large-scale active military presence in the region, clearly directed at Iran, has got to focus their minds and got to get them thinking at least about agreeing to some form of concessions. And I think President Trump will want to secure significant concessions. He's not going to have this massive military force here and walk away with a couple of minor prizes. He's going to want something very significant, but probably including not only enrichment issues, but also including the issues that Israel's very keen on, which, as you say, is the whole business of nuclear disarmament, of ballistic missiles, etc., and ending their support for proxies in the region. I'm pretty sure Trump will be thinking along the same lines. I don't think there's much space between Israel and the US on this. But I do think that if Iran is wise enough to offer something big to Trump, then he may well take that and stand down. He may well do so.
What sort of thing could the Iranians offer President Trump in order for him to stay his hand? Without, by the way, being accused of being like Barack Obama. You remember Barack Obama said that he had a red line. It was promptly crossed. There were no consequences for the Syrian regime when they started moving those chemical weapons around. So what could Iran offer?
Well, I think it's got to be ending the nuclear project, stopping or at least severely restricting ballistic missiles, and ending support to proxies in the region. That's if they're not willing to do at least two or three or all three of those things, I don't think he's going to walk away. And I don't think they're likely to offer that. And if they do offer it, whatever they offer, I'm sure Prime Minister Netanyahu now is reminding Trump of this if he needs reminding. Whatever Iran offers, you can't take their word for it. You absolutely can't take whatever they say as being something they will do, because they will not do it.
So let me ask you something. I'd like you, with your expertise, to paint a picture for us. Israel was rightly very focused on stopping Iran's nuclear weapons program for reasons everybody ought to understand. I think less understood is just the massive damage that Iran's wanted arsenal of ballistic missiles threatens to bring to Israel and, frankly, to the neighborhood. Could you just explain why Israel is now so adamant against the ballistic missile program, which really came to the top latterly?
Yeah, well, I was here myself, as I'm sure you were, during the 12-day war, and we both saw the damage that Iran's ballistic missiles did. I think something like 29 got through, something like that, which is a relatively small proportion, because most of them were knocked out of the sky before they left the Iranian airspace even. But you know, there was quite a few deaths as a result of that, and there could have been more, could easily have been more. And of course, Israel's not prepared to tolerate that sort of thing. It's very clear that they must preferably end a regime that threatens Israel like that wishes to see the destruction of Israel. And if they can't end that regime, at the very least, they must end their ballistic missile program alongside the nuclear missile program.
Let me ask you about something else. I've always thought the ebullience and celebration around normalization is a little bit overstated for various reasons. And we're actually seeing whether normalization is happening or is about to happen. We're seeing trouble in the region. We're seeing trouble because Qatar, Turkey, that was formerly in joint military exercises with Israel regularly and often, the Saudis, where there was mooted to be normalization right on its way, they are lobbying. We're not surprised about the Qataris, but Turkey, the Saudis, and also the Egyptians, with whom we have a peace treaty, are lobbying Donald Trump not to take action against the regime. How can these people really be trusted, and what's informing those decisions?
Well, I think you have to look at Turkey and Qatar separately to an extent, because they are strong supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
They're strong supporters of Hamas, and they want harm done to Israel. And
the reason I threw Turkey in there, just to be clear, is because they're emblematic of what worries me, which is we used to have a pretty strong alliance with them, and now they're an overt enemy. But exactly as you described.
And I think an alliance could return under different leadership with Turkey. But we'll put that aside for a moment. But I think the other countries, Saudi Arabia and Egypt in particular, they say Arab countries do say one thing but mean another, and they'll say something publicly and something else under the table. I would be very surprised, in particular, if Saudi Arabia and also Egypt don't want to see the downfall of this regime in Tehran. I'm pretty sure they do. But they're saying this for public consumption rather than actually, and I'm sure that they're passing different messages about this to Trump and the White House.
Back in the old country, Britain, where I grew up, in the defense of which you proudly served, heroically served, it seems to have completely lost its will to stand up for its culture, and it seems to be bending the knee to what many people say is immigration, but I actually think is Islamification of not just Britain, but Europe. But Britain's an example of that. What do you see its destiny now in the next 10, 20 years? Do service personnel such as yourself, who deployed so bravely overseas in the pursuit of protecting British interests, do they like what they see when they come back home?
I can't speak for servicemen generally, but what I can say is that British soldiers who fought in Afghanistan, they fought against the Taliban and other Islamic extremists. And there were more British people, British Muslims, serving with the Taliban, fighting on the side of the Taliban against the British than there were Muslims in the British Army during that period. That, I think, is an indication of the state of play. Things are going to get worse. Things have been getting worse, getting bad for many, many years, and they're only going to get worse. And no government, either the government now or no prospective government of the UK, has the guts to stop it. If they want to take strong action to prevent the Islamification of the UK, then it's going to mean big trouble for them. They don't want trouble. They look 4 years ahead. They will kick the can down the road to somebody else. And I think the end result of that is very likely to be civil war in Britain, where the indigenous...
Physical civil war.
Actual civil... I'm not talking about the American Civil War, uniformed armies. I'm talking about something more like Northern Ireland, but on a much more intensive scale, where you have the indigenous British and the some of the immigrant population and the British government all on three different sides fighting against each other. And if I'd be very surprised if that doesn't happen, because there's no prospect of the government, any government today, stopping this from occurring. And the big problem that British people have is they don't have political choice. We don't really live in a democracy. Whatever party you vote for, you get the same policies. And that applies also to the immigration and to the way in which the Islamic population is allowed to grow, and not just grow in numbers, but grow in dominance. And they're increasingly bold. There are now in Parliament, since the last election, there are something like 6 Islamist MPs, members of Parliament, who got elected on a Gaza platform in a British election.
Yeah,
and we're going to see much more of that in the next election.
Let me ask you just one last question that rides off your answer there. Keir Starmer managed, very embattled. I'm pleased that he's embattled, to declare my hand. But Keir Starmer seems to be the embodiment of a politician and a non-leader. Does the fact that he managed to find his way to recognizing a phantom, non-existent, apparition Palestinian state, does that sum up everything that you're basically describing?
It tells you everything, because that decision to recognize the state of Palestine, which doesn't exist, as you rightly say, was nothing to do with foreign policy. It's nothing to do with the state of Palestine. It's all to do with appeasing his Labour Party supporters, which are a combination of Islamic people who support their Islamic religion themselves, or hard left. And the combination of what's called the Red-Green Alliance in Britain led to that. That's what it's all about. It's all about appeasement. Nothing to do with what's going on over here at all. Nothing.
Well, Colonel Richard Kemp, it's a privilege to have you. Thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.